Morgan, one thing I must bring up right away from the very start is Mary Clayton. There's that moment for me. I was at the rooftop screening, and they turn off all the tracks, less the vocal track, of course, her vocal track, I should say. And first you get him, and you can see for Mick Jagger, he was moved. You could, if you've seen him in interviews, he's so at this point unfazable, whatever the term is, but you could almost see that he was like, wow. When I defy anyone who's heard that song, which we all have on radio for generations now, but if you hear that with just her singing that, like you showed in your movie, I was just started tearing up. It was just so powerful a moment. And she had that reaction too, I guess, right?
I mean...
Long-winded question.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, the thing is, a song like Give Me Shelter is probably the greatest backup vocal performance of all time. I mean, it's just incredible. It's an incredible song. It makes that song, but you never really think about what that voice brings to that song. And when I found that isolated vocal track of Mary singing, it's unbelievable. It's like going back to the origins of the Rosetta Stone. Like, you can finally understand where it all came from, and how it was built, how the pyramids were built. You can understand these things by going back and hearing it that way, and it's just a revelation. I loved hearing that, and then I played it for them, and it was an amazing moment. And my first thought was, that's amazing. My second thought was, oh my God, I hope I can clear this song for the documentary.
We're going to get to that.
Yeah, okay.
The clearance is, as a side note, I spent 10 years in the music industry working at Sony Music.
Really? Were you at Legacy, Columbia, or which side?
Well, actually, I worked for the distribution company. Even though I worked in the creative services when we serviced all the labels.
Okay, yeah, because Sony's doing our soundtrack, and Rob
Legacy?
Santos at Legacy is doing the Mary Clayton, and they've been helping us out big time.
I don't suppose that on the soundtrack you're going to have that.
Couldn't clear that for the soundtrack, unfortunately.
I'll just get the movie when that becomes available. It's a very, very powerful film. No surprise to you, I'm sure. You just must be eating up all the responses that you're getting from those that see the film.
Yeah, I mean, it's been amazing to see how crowds have reacted to this film, and really, I didn't know how people were going to react when I finished the film, and when I first showed it to an audience at Sundance, people just blew me away. It was one of those moments that kind of changed my life, really. But the more incredible thing, really, is that I was there with a bunch of these singers in our film who hadn't seen the film. So they saw it with 1,200 people for the first time, and it's changing their lives. And that, honestly, is the most incredible thing about this film. And now all this incredible stuff's happening to them, and there are no more deserving artists than these guys. And all people have to do is have a chance to get to know them and really hear them, and they fall in love with them.
Do you think this even has the potential for shifting the perception of what we call the backup singer?
Absolutely. I think for me, the process of making the film was retraining my ear to really listen to backup vocals, and I really started playing pop radio and classic radio and just listening to it when I was driving around all the time and noticing backup vocals in songs that I'd heard 1,000 times but never realized the backup vocal was a huge part of that song. And I kept lists and iTunes playlists. And
going back how long?
This is from as soon as I started the project. Which was about 2.5 years ago.
Okay.
But everything from Steely Dan to Peter Gabriel to Adele to everywhere. You just hear these important, crucial backup singing parts, and I just had to retrain my ear. And my hope is, after seeing the film, that people maybe listen to things just a little bit differently. They just think about it a little bit more, because people didn't think about it at all ever until now. So that's one of my goals for this film.
Yeah. What came as a surprise to me, and I didn't anticipate it seeing the film, was that how the film, in a sense, even though it's about the backup singers, oh wow, it sounds perfectly entertaining. But what I didn't get was what I didn't anticipate was all the subtext. That this is a film also about America. It's about race. It's about religion, spirituality, which is some of the big sort of topics of our country.
It's about all those things in part, but really the film to me is about something even bigger, which is how we fit into our society. Sounds big, but these are people who are proud of the work they do. They're talented. Some of them have had big dreams that didn't pan out. Some of them are just happy being workers doing their job without much credit. And, most of us fit into one of those roles somehow. I mean, I think as a documentary filmmaker started identifying with what these ladies have gone through.
In what way?
Well, I've spent my life making films about other people and telling their stories, and, you don't always get all that much attention for it, and that's fine. I'm proud of the work I do, and, I'm not a big attention seeker, but I just, their attitudes resonated with me on a deep level. And I think it's one of the things I know has resonated with audiences, because they come up and tell me afterwards, which is they see themselves in these stories. I mean, even a friend of mine who's a documentary editor came and saw the screening Saturday, and I saw him on Sunday, and he said, this is the story of documentary editors. We make a film and we don't get the credit. And it is, but it's a story of many people like that.
We're speaking with Morgan Neville, who has made a very, very wonderful documentary called 20 Feet From Stardom. Were you always a music fan yourself?
No, I'm a dyed-in-the-wool music geek, and I played in bands forever. I subscribed to, Trouser Press, Rolling Stone, and everything else from the beginning. I have a vinyl collection that's way too big for my wife's comfort. And, I'm one of those guys who have been making music. I've been making music docs for a long, long time. I think initially to support my music habit and to really hide it.
Right.
And now it's somehow become a career.
You're an old hand at making music docs. How do you contend with clearances and that issue, especially like in a movie like this? It's like from beginning to end, it's just music.
It's the first thing you grapple with. That's the thing I've learned. That if you can't get your handle on the rights, don't make the film. Because I've seen good documentaries get made without the rights, and they've never been released.
As we speak, I think I see Lisa. Is that Lisa right behind us?
Yep, that is. Hi, Lisa. Aww.
What a lovely person.
She's awesome.
But yeah, she definitely comes across as just a ball of beautiful energy. I don't know if that's right, but beautiful energy emanates.
She's just
from all of these
pure
ladies,
soul.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing because a lot of them, you don't see the bitterness. I'm glad we were interrupted, but because the clearance conversation is a show in itself, I suppose.
It is.
But I really feel like I would do a disservice to myself talking to you, as well as to anybody who's listening, to not really dwell on the emotional side of the film, which is
it's a big part of it.
It's all of it. It's for me, and I suspect yourself. As well as so many people, music, of course, is an emotional experience, and so in this one, there's no end to it. He puts the mic down because I'm going off, but I really had such a strong visceral experience watching the film, and I was so amazed that none of these ladies come off bitter. Although you can see the complex nature of some of their backstories, of course.
Yeah, and part of it is that when you start becoming a backup singer, you know what the job description is. Which is, it's not about you. It's about making somebody else look good. And like I said, a lot of them take great pride in that. And a lot of people expect more bitterness from them because you sing behind somebody and you're a better singer than they are. Doesn't that make you frustrated and angry? And it really doesn't, because that's the gig. A lot of people don't survive in the backup world because their egos can't take it. They're not, psychologically made up for that.
One way or
the
other
thing.
kind of backfires.
But the people in the film are people who've actually had careers as backup singers.
Yeah.
And that's because they're able to do that. Now, when they have, in many cases, flirted with solo careers or had solo albums and those haven't taken off, that's kind of another matter. And that is a big part of the film, which is it's not about talent. It's absolutely not about talent. It's about so many other variables. It's about the song, the producer, the record label, the business, the timing. And, at one point I had a montage in the film that I cut out for a few reasons, but I had a montage of all the excuses these backup singers had as to why their solo careers didn't go anywhere. Mm-hmm. And it was stuff like, my A&R guy got busted for coke the week my record came out. The record pressing plant burnt down the week my record came out. I had an unintentionally profane song in England on my first single, and they banned it. And
those are the same excuses as lead singers, by the way, and of frontmen. I mean,
yeah,
they happen to everybody, right?
They do. I've thought a lot about it recently. That obviously, ambition is a huge part of what separates lead singers from backup singers, because you've got to be ambitious to put up with all the crap you have to put up with. And I feel like these singers are so naturally talented that they never had to work at it, that they were told from a young age, you're brilliant, and they are brilliant. So when it came down to adding intense ambition onto that, a lot of them don't have it because they've never had to have it because they were just so good, and in thinking about it, I think that might be part of it.
You didn't get to borrow a phrase, inside baseball either with these singers, in terms of like what they do, how they sing and work together with the other singers. You see it, but you don't really get too much into that. Do you think you lose the people?
Don't. I mean, it's hard because I love that stuff. And I love the music history stuff. Mm-hmm. And it was so tempting to make this film a discography, that there are so many amazing credits that even my main characters I don't tell you about because I was resisting it becoming just like I said, a discography or a list of historical facts. Same thing with the technique stuff. I love technique stuff. But ultimately, I was tough on myself and said, really think about this as an emotional narrative story, and all the other stuff is excellent DVD extras. Which it's just a decision I made, but I don't know, I feel good about it.
So do I. They all come off as survivors.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely survivors. And something that's not to be underestimated is their faith, because all the stuff they've gone through, so many of them said to me, if it's God's will, it's God's will. Where you expect bitterness, you instead find faith. And, for them, I think it's a huge part of their lives, and many of them are deeply religious, and that's great. I mean, it's helped them deal with everything.
Not just deeply spiritual, but actually, you're saying religious in the Christian sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And it's actually another thing about backup singing that I think the church ties into is that, singing gospel music coming up or singing in a choir coming up is not only great technical training to learn how to sing harmony, but it's great psychological training for how to be a backup singer, which is work with other people, support the song, the pastor, the lead singer, that you're there to serve some power higher than yourself.
Yeah, and something as spiritual is achieved through the combination of voices, right?
Absolutely. Well, that's everybody talks about the blend, capital B blend.
Yeah,
that was the thing that it's what backup singers do. When the voices come together and they achieve this thing that's not any of their individual voices, they lose their individual selves, and it becomes its own sound in the blend. Yes. And the blend, for many of these singers, is a spiritual state. It's a natural high. It's this thing that's, addictive and beautiful, and, it's the thing that so many of them spend their whole lives chasing, or they stay doing this job just because they love that feeling.
Yeah, what's so great about the film is that also you do get that same feeling about their own performances, their individual performances too. That as we pointed to at the very beginning of the conversation with Mary's vocal on "Give Me Shelter," whew,
Yeah.
the goosebumps or keep coming back. Just even remembering it. What did you maybe learn from or take from the film that maybe you hadn't anticipated going in? Anything?
I learned so much about backup singers because I didn't know anything, and I think all my original ideas about them were wrong. And that was important. I think my preconceived notions were backup singers maybe aren't quite as good as lead singers. That's why they're singing in the background. Maybe backup singers don't have that much character to their voice. Maybe technically they're good, but they don't have a lot of individual character, and that's why they kind of ended up in the backup world. And those are both completely wrong.
In fact, maybe the character is more important than Olympic vocal talent. I mean, in a way, it's
sure.
being able to sing through and work blend, of course, and then also understand the lead vocal and how you're supporting it. And maybe you don't have to always have the greatest voice, necessarily like a lead singer should probably have.
Well, I think about like one of my favorite lead singers, like Joe Strummer. Joe Strummer's not a good singer, but he's my favorite singer.
Yeah,
because he brought a lot of character to it. But I mean, one thing I explore in the film is somebody like a Tata Vega or a Darlene Love or Elisa Fisher. Their voices, their solo star voices, they have so much character and so much personality. And by putting that front and center, I mean, that was a revelation to me, just to be able to let them do what they do, and their character comes out, their personality comes out, and you realize that these are fully formed artists. And, really, if some of them had a hit, if Mary Clayton had a hit on one of those first albums, then she'd be Patti LaBelle, or Chaka Khan, or,
right.
Somebody who everybody knew.
Right. Who were backup singers, right? That was your part, weren't they? Or no, they weren't backup singers. They sang in groups.
Yeah.
It's a big difference.
They sang in groups.
Big
but and a lot of other
different
people. I mean, no, but, there is a long list of people that made it from the backup world to the front world. I mean, Sheryl Crow people talk about, but, Cher, Mary J. Blige, Dionne Warwick, Luther Vandross, Mike McDonald, there are examples.
Don't know any of those. The film, 20 Feet From Stardom, opens...
Yeah, it starts in New York and L.A.
So you're starting in New York and L.A.
Starting in New York and L.A. on June 14th, and then going wider and wider all over the country. So it's exciting.
The rippling of the vocal performances.
Yeah, the harmonies will be echoing all over the country in a theater near you.
Yeah, a veritable wall of sound.
Absolutely.
Any postscript type thoughts about the Phil Spector story?
Well,
I'm kind of interested in your take. I know Phil Spector seems to be an ongoing curiosity and for the culture.
Of course. I mean, Phil is a unique character in music history. He was one of the biggest producers of the 60s, and he was a brilliant producer. Even people that didn't like Phil don't take anything away from his artistic genius. He was a brilliant producer and arranger. The problem was that Phil was obsessed with power. I mean, that's kind of my take on it. Why he would treat people around him the way he did was that Phil always wanted control. He wanted to be about Phil. I mean, that's part of why he wouldn't promote somebody like a Darlene Love, was that Phil was the star, and that he was jealous of his own stars. It's a strange psychological situation that is not the normal kind of bad music industry story that you hear of getting screwed over by your record label. Those stories are common. Stories like what artists had to go through with Phil are beyond that. I mean, they're tough, and it's part of what makes Darlene's story so dramatic and even tragic at times. Is what she had to go through with him, and it's unique. And the fact that she was able to overcome it is a huge testament to her, and a huge part of our film too. It was something epically difficult in the music industry, to deal with.
Well, thank you. I think that's a great place to
sort
of leave it.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Morgan.